What's up, all my people out there? Welcome to episode 9 of the We're in Therapy podcast. My name is Darren Greenfield, and I'm here with my co-host, my beautiful bride, this beautiful woman sitting right here next to me, Adina Greenfield. Adina, what's up, girl?
Nothing much. What's up with you?
Man, you know what? This is special because it's episode number 9 for us, but it's the first episode where we've actually set up and we're shooting video along with the audio podcast, because we wanted to go video because there's some things that we talk about that you just got to see in person. You just have to see these things in person and be about it in person. And so I am glad that everybody out there gets to see how beautiful my baby is and how that hair is slayed right now, girl. I'm telling you, listen.
Shout out to Marissa, the best hairstylist in Philly.
There you go. There you go. You got that. And this idea to go video, let's give flowers when they're due. Mm-hmm. This idea to shoot video comes from a crew that's really killing it out there in the podcast game. We took a How to Launch Your Podcast class mastermind this week. And shout out to the boy David Shands and his crew over at Social Proof. We really, really appreciate all the tips and the pointers and the teaching that they gave us, because this podcast is really important to us.
Yes.
And the reason why it's really important to us is because we care about marriages, and we want to help marriages and relationships and couples go from superficial love to deep, lasting intimacy. And so any way that we can make the podcast better, we want to make sure that we do that. But let's get into what we're talking about tonight. You know, usually we have a topic that's really centered on relationships, that's really centered on the chemistry, on the intimacy of relationships. But tonight we're going to do something a little different, and we're going to do this often. It's going to be what we call a hot topic night. Mm-hmm. And during a hot topic night, what we're going to do is we're going to take a current event, that's something that's going on in the world, and we're going to talk about this hot topic and pick each other's brains on it. Here's why. Let me give you something that I believe, and this is just my opinion. I believe that there is nothing more sexier. There's nothing more sexier than being able to intellectually stimulate your partner.
I agree.
To be able to sit on the couch and have a deep conversation and look at the worldview of your partner, see the world from their lens, and you might not agree on everything.
Right.
But you can see, like, man,
I never thought about it.
I never thought about it that way. And man, this girl that I married is smart as I don't know what. Because there's nothing worse than trying to get into a deep conversation with somebody and you realize that they're the dumbest tool and the dullest tool in the shed, right? And then you're just like, okay, this isn't going to really go anywhere because we can't intellectually stimulate one another. So we're going to do that tonight in front of you. And here's our topic. Here's the topic and the title of the podcast tonight, this tagline: what Naomi could have told Michael and what DMX told us all. With Naomi could have told Michael and what DMX told us all. Now, if you were paying attention to the news this week, we may date this episode. That's okay. It's coming right out. Last weekend, Naomi Osaka loses a match in the U.S. Open that she shouldn't have lost. And she gets on the press conference. You can just see that she wasn't there during the match.
She really wasn't herself.
She really wasn't herself.
She really wasn't herself.
She loses this match. She gets into the press conference and she says, you know, I really don't know how to feel. When I play tennis, when I win, I feel relieved. When I lose, I feel really, really sad. And I don't believe that that is normal, right? And so I'm going to step away from tennis for a while. And I don't know when the next time I'm going to play my tennis match. I don't know if I am going to play a tennis match. And now this isn't Naomi's first time in letting us into her life and how she deals with mental health. A few weeks ago, she actually, or maybe a month and a half ago, she actually decided not to take interviews. And they told her, if you're not going to take interviews, you can't play. And she drops out of a tournament because of mental health. Now, what I noticed about this is that when people began to talk about this, they began to talk about this in a generational kind of way. Mm-hmm. People who were in the generation before millennials and Gen Zers were like, oh man, she's soft. Every time these kids can't do so, every time something's going wrong, they screaming mental health, mental health, mental health. Every time they don't want to play anything, this is why, because they got participation trophies growing up. They didn't have to win. They never had to fight through any adversity. Man, this is just her being soft. Mm-hmm. Did you hear those kind of comments out there?
I did, and it was discouraging.
Okay.
To hear that from the older generation, but then at the same time, if you know people from that generation, you understand the dynamic and the culture they came up in.
Right. And so me being the tip of the iceberg millennial, 1984.
No, I actually think I'm the tip of the iceberg.
No, I don't think you're a millennial.
I am.
Are you a millennial?
I am. I believe I'm the last year, and we're not even going to discuss what year that is.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know that you were a millennial.
I'm almost certain, but you can Google it to see. I mean, what do you want to say? I'm a baby boomer?
No, I wouldn't say that you're a boomer. Right. I wouldn't even go there tonight.
Well, let's get it.
But being, so both of us on the tip, because you're not that much older than me, but you are older than me. Us being on the tip of the iceberg of millennials, sometimes we do side with boomers.
Right.
And so
we do.
When Naomi first said mental health, I don't want to talk, I was like, oh, okay, I see it. But I do believe there's a part of her that is like being kind of soft right now. A part of her that is not making it through the adversity the way that she needs to. But then after Naomi, and we're going to talk about these together, but let me tell you why we made the title this way. Then this week, after the weekend when Naomi drops out of the U.S., loses in the U.S. Open, doesn't know when she's going to come back to play tennis. We get news on, I believe it was Wednesday or Thursday, that Michael K. Williams, Omar from The Wire, Atticus is father from Lovecraft Country, Chalky White from Boardwalk Empire, just such a transparent and very potent and powerful soul, dies from a drug overdose on Wednesday or Thursday. Heroin mixed with fentanyl, just such a strong drug, dies from this drug overdose. But nobody knows, at least in the public, maybe some people in his family, but not too many people in the public know that he's struggling with this drug problem.
Right.
Everybody knows what Naomi is going through because Naomi comes from a generation where she's just very transparent. They're very transparent. They're very mindful to a certain extent, right? To a certain extent. Especially when it comes to mental health. Mental health is like a buzzword. So what we wanted to do is just have this conversation to say, what if Naomi got a chance to talk to Michael K. Williams? What could she have told him? And then we're bringing another one in here, a death that still feels like it's very recent. And what if we would pay attention to the signs of what DMX has told us all? And so let's start there. What did you think about Naomi Osaka coming out and saying, man, I'm not in love with the game right now. I don't know what's going on with me in the game right now. I'm stepping away from it. My mental health is off. What did you feel when you heard her say that? What were your thoughts? What's your opinion about how she handled that?
Personally, I thought she handled it well. And the reason why I say it is she had to make the decision that was best for her. Right. And in making that decision, she was very honest. I mean, she lives a part of her life in the spotlight. So therefore, she couldn't just disappear and go off the map. And so she was honest to say, this is what I'm struggling with. I think a lot of people, like we discussed, the older people who said, oh, she's soft, she's this. A lot of people wouldn't have done that. They would have made some kind of story up, some excuse up as to why they're taking a break from tennis. Right, they would have put a spin on it. But I felt like she was honest and she did what she needed to do for herself. So what did you love about the decision that you made? You felt as though she was honest. So the honesty, I know you're a big honesty person. Just be real, just be upfront on what you're going through. Is there anything else that you really loved about the way that Naomi handled the pressure and the overwhelming weight that tennis was putting on her and the lack of the love for the game? Because that's what it seems like. She's just like, I don't love the game right now. One thing I really admired watching the interview was someone in the background tried to interject. And she said, yeah. No. Yeah. She basically said, no, I'm going to finish what I have to say. and you're not going to stop me. And I think so many times people are thinking about the endorsements, they're thinking about the followers, they're thinking about things that are attached to, some kind of gain for her, but they aren't thinking about her.
Yeah.
And so I like the fact that she respectfully let them know, nah, I'm going to finish this conversation.
I'm going to finish this. Yeah, one of the things that I really loved about what Naomi did and how she handled it is that I love that she tried her best to process in front of people. That she didn't wait until she had this carefully crafted statement. She didn't wait until she left the press conference and then the next day or two came out with something that said, I don't know when I'm going to play again. That she really just tried to vulnerably process in front of people and find the words.
It was raw.
It was raw.
She gave it to you raw.
It was very raw.
And the reality of it is, if anybody has been through anything, I mean, that's how we are. Like, if truth be told, if you were to see people at their weakest moments, there's a level of vulnerability that you see. Like you said, when it comes to just being honest and processing, many times we don't get to see that. So it's not that a lot of people haven't done that; they just haven't been given the opportunity to do it in front of the camera. So
a lot of people will say that, well, maybe she shouldn't have processed at that time. Maybe that was a youthful mistake to share your feelings about a situation like this, and you haven't fully thought through it. Maybe that was a youthful mistake because you were in the heat of the moment, or it's what the old people used to say, never let them see you sweat, right? Maybe that was a mistake because you're going through all of these issues and these problems over the game in your mental health space, and you just let people know too much of your business. What would be your reply to that?
You just said it. It was a youthful mistake. So if you believe it was a youthful mistake, then give her room to make the mistake. Me personally, I may disagree with that. Other people may disagree with it. People may agree with it. But sometimes I feel like the older generation and even people in our age bracket, we put too many expectations on the younger generation without allowing them the chance to make a mistake. That in and of itself, saying that was a youthful mistake, that in and of itself shows me that we have this expectation of perfection from her and people her age.
Would you call it an expectation of perfection or expectation of maturity?
I think it's an expectation of maturity and perfection.
Okay, how do you delineate between the two?
I think they're really one and the same. I think you're saying, I think this person should be mature enough to handle this in a different way. And I believe sometimes people look at her talent, right? She is beyond her years in tennis.
Wow.
There are some people who will play tennis all of their lives and they will never reach the level that this young lady has.
That's right. Number 3 ranked in the world. Right now she's 3rd.
And I'm not sure how old she is. I'm not sure her exact age.
Right. I know she's young. I'm not sure her exact age either, but I'll get it for you.
She's young. So sometimes I feel like when people see a level of maturity in a certain area, it translates across the person's life.
Right.
But you have to realize she's still a young lady growing into herself.
So let's talk about expectations very quickly. What kind of expectations should the older generation or even other athletes that we listen to the I Am Athlete podcast together? We love that they give some insight. And to hear other athletes talk about how they felt about Naomi Osaka's decision. And it was a mixed bag.
It was a mixed bag.
Some of them were like, listen, if you're going to play the game, love the game. Be good at the game. Show up. Be ready. All of us have to fight through mental adversity and different things like that. If you're not going to be able to do that, just step away. You shouldn't have played. You shouldn't have come. And then others were just like, Well, she came and she failed. When was the last time you were perfect? So what do you think when it comes to expectations, that when you talked about this older generation having expectations on the younger generation, what do you think are good about those expectations? And what do you think are just, so let me not say good and bad, because I don't think that that is the challenge. What do you think are healthy about the expectations? And what do you think are unhealthy? What do you think is unhealthy about the expectations?
Well, I think one of the things that the older generation has that are healthy things about the expectations, you know, if you're going to show up somewhere, give it your all. Now, what your all is that day, I don't know. You know, she wasn't really in a space. I mean, she gave it all she could in the space that she was in. Right. You see what I'm saying? And so I think, you know, older people tell you, like, don't half behind it. If you're going to come, do what you know, come and do what you say you're going to do. But you also have to realize, even in saying that statement, that doesn't mean that may have been all she had that day. Right. So that doesn't mean she didn't give it her all, but mentally, that's all she could give. That's all she had that day. That's all she had that day. Right. And so sometimes when a person like her sits before the camera, an older person may say, well, she didn't give it her all. And I think that's an unhealthy expectation. Well, she did give it her all. She gave it all she had that day. And let me give people an analogy, and maybe, you know, some majority of the people will understand, maybe not everyone. If you're a parent, you know what that statement means. Right. Some days you're giving it your all. You're operating at your highest capacity because mentally and physically you're able to do that. And there are some days as a parent, and we've recently experienced this, where you are just wiped out mentally, physically, spiritually, and you just don't have much to give. Right. But you show up because you have no other option but to show up, and you give your child the best that you can give to them that day. So I agree with you. And I think that happens just even as a human. Right. Right. And I think one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of grace and understanding with one another when we show up and we don't have it all is because we have these tools and these instruments in our hands that can make it seem like we have it together every day. Right, it's a facade. It's a facade. People live a fake life on social media. We have this discussion all the time. That some of the stuff I see on social media it's just unreal. You're not going to tell me every single day of your life is great. Right. That's a lie. Right. But this is the thing. We live this fake life so much, and we are rewarded for this fake life, right? Naomi's rewarded for the way that she plays tennis. She's criticized for her transparency, right? Like they say, confession is good for the soul, but bad for the reputation. Right. So it was good for her to get that out, but it was bad for her reputation because it's just like, well, aren't you supposed to be? And I remember this. I was in New York the time of the U.S. Open because I was with a friend, and we were thinking about going to the U.S. Open. We were just in New York hanging out, but we were thinking about going to the U.S. Open, and like four corners we walk by, we see billboards with Naomi Osaka on it. And I could just hear people, when they walk by, I could just, even my mind is like, well, where's that girl at? Where's the one that's on the salad endorsement saying this is the way that champions eat, this is the way that champions train, this is the way that champions do this? And when we can't show up as that person, when we can't bring our A game, the Instagram, the Facebook, the Twitter allows us to fake it. Right. Right. Instead of just owning it and saying, I'm off today. Owning it and saying... Or just staying off of the social media world, period. Right. You don't even have to let people know, and this is no shot against Naomi's decision to go before the camera and say what she said, but you don't have to let people know you're having an off day or an off week. You can just stay off of social media. That's true. All right, so that's what you loved about Naomi's decision. What you loved is that somebody from her team actually tried to stop her from expressing how she felt when she couldn't find the words. They maybe were trying to save her. They maybe were trying to save the brand.
and you were just like, man, I love the fact that she just kept going, no, I really want to finish this. What I loved about it is that she actually tried to process. So it was kind of a similar thing, that she really tried to sit there and transparently process. Now, let me ask you this. What didn't you like about the way that Naomi handled it? If there was something, and let me tell you this, this is just conversation, right? These are just conversations about the worldviews that we have, about what we think about a situation. If I knew Naomi, I would tell Naomi, care less about what I like and what I didn't like.
Exactly.
Right? Like, I don't want you to, anybody to hear this and think that we have a right to think, to influence the way that she decides her life. But I think that underneath her decision, there's a bigger theme that stretches across of all of humanity. Right? There's more than one Naomi out there.
Right.
Right? There are people who are struggling with this and who may not have taken the course that Naomi has taken, and they need to. There may be some people out there who have taken that course that Naomi has taken, and they were a little premature with it. Right? They should have worked a little harder. They should have bent under adversity. That mental health is not a one-size-fits-all word for when things are just hard.
Right.
Right. So there's somebody out there who's using that term who may not be in the space that she's in. So was there anything that you did not like about her decision?
To be honest with you, if I had one dislike, it was just that she waited until she was at her breaking point.
Girl, you can tell we married. You can tell because I'm thinking the same thing over here.
It's just the fact that she waited until her breaking point. I wish when these things started to surface and when she made every attempt to work through them, but realized, you know what? Maybe this is a little bit more than pushing my way through or getting through this or dealing with adversity because I can't shake it. I wish instead of making herself move forward, she would have took a step back and started to process and deal with it at that point.
If you could, I want you to give your opinion on what do you think are some of the factors that probably caused her not to voice this concern or make this decision as early as possible.
The factors are, you have all of these people around you and they're telling you, go, do it. You're the best. And so they're pushing you to what they consider to be quote unquote greatness. And so they're of the stance where, like we discussed in the previous podcast, are you a cheerleader or are you a coach?
Right.
So they're coming at it from a coaching standpoint, which is, more of a, I know you could do it. You did this before. You're going to come and let that break you. That's the angle they're coming at it from. Yeah. Instead of I want to cheer you on whatever decision you decide to make. I'm going to be in your corner and you're going to hear me saying, yay, Naomi. That would be the assumption. So I agree with you. Naomi Osaka made $60 million last year. She made more money than most people will ever dream of making.
In 4 lifetimes. But dig this. When she made $60 million, somebody that she was connected to made $600,000.
Right.
Somebody that she was connected to made $1.2 million.
Yep.
Somebody that she was connected to made $6 million. So if she steps away from the table,
there's a monetary value that's lost.
Right.
That is something to be, highly considered. Like, let's not be, foolish about it. Yes, there's a monetary value that's lost when she steps away. There's a monetary value that's lost, and people who were feeding their family off of her talent and her ability now have to say, when she decides to leave the game, I have to figure out something else. I got to figure out something else, or I need to keep her here. And I think one of the things, the first thing that we learned from Naomi straight up, and in the first point, the thing that we loved is try your best to voice your feelings by any means necessary. Put words to it. Even when it feels like you can't get it out, even when it feels like it's just a cloudy space in your head, you need to struggle and try to put words to it, right? Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to impress anybody with your words, but put words to the pain, to the frustration, to the depression, to the anxiety. Put words to what you're going through. And then the second thing that we're saying here is what we would hope that people would hear from this is, don't wait
to care for yourself because you have an obligation to care or meet the expectations of others.
Right.
Don't wait to say, I need to seek therapy. I need to step away from the game. I need to say this because you have people depending on you and you feel as though this is what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Right. Without proper self-care, there is no real care for
right.
others.
You can't.
Right. And there are a bunch of us who out here and we think that, man, I can run myself in the ground and care for the people who are around me and believe that will actually be a healthy care for them.
No, and it's not. And I'm a person that struggles with that.
Yeah.
I greatly struggle with being self-sacrificial.
Mm-hmm.
And I will run myself into the ground until I am operating. I don't even know it's on. It's on a reserve tank.
yeah.
And then I get to the point where I'm like Naomi. I'm just having a mental processing session and breakdown because I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I know how that feels personally.
Yeah.
And that's just not a good place to be in.
So before we move on to Michael K. Williams, let me ask you one more question about Naomi. What do you think Naomi's decision could teach the generations before her? That's the first question. And then the second part of that's the first part of it. How do you think the generations before Naomi could have helped her? So what do you think her decision and how she did what she did could have taught the generations could teach the generations that came before her?
I actually think it teaches the generation before her how to process.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're thinking about a generation where there was a lot of stuff that went on in that generation.
Mm-hmm.
Just like there's a lot of stuff that goes on today. Don't think the problems that are going on today are unique until today.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think people didn't have mental health diagnoses.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't have trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to know what? Sweep it under the rug.
Wow.
Keep on moving.
Yep.
This is how you deal with it. And so I don't think a lot of people were ever given the time to process. And I just think about my mom, God rest her soul, and some of the trauma she experienced and she told me about. And when I think about those conversations, I think about like, wow, you had to tough it out. And that was kind of like her persona.
Mm-hmm.
You had to tough it out and move on.
Mm.
You never really had a chance to process and sit in it.
Yeah.
So me talking to you, and these conversations I had with her when I was an adult, my mama was clear about not letting a child be an adult's business.
Come on now, the way
So
you said that with your head all moving.
Right. You
remembered what mama said.
My mom wasn't having adult conversations when I was a kid. This is when I'm in my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to those conversations and asking questions that she felt comfortable with answering or just mentioning certain things, I say to myself, I'm like, wow, this happened 30 plus years ago.
Right.
But because she never had the chance to process, I could see that it's still wrong.
Mm.
Once you peel the layers back, I can see that there's still a raw, tender spot.
Jeez, yes.
So now you have a generation of people
mm-hmm.
who come across, oh, you're not tough, you're not this. And I'm not saying everybody.
Right.
Oh, toughen up, this, and that. But sometimes I just think that's a facade.
Mm.
That's just how they cope.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they learn to cope. And sometimes they've learned that all their lives. And so it's very hard to, get people to acknowledge that, address that, and then deal with that.
When you said that, there's an imagery that popped up in my head. Anybody knows that when you get a cut, you get a scab.
Mm-hmm.
But with cuts, especially big cuts, that what happens underneath is that when the cut is closing up and it's healing, your body creates what they call scar tissue,
mm-hmm.
right? So the tissue is tougher than it was before because it's endured some trauma and it's healed itself, right? And that scar tissue is there. But what you said to me with the older generation and how they function is that they would get these cuts from life. They would get these wounds from life and they would hurry up and cover it up but they wouldn't allow it to heal properly for the scar tissue to grow in.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't allow their skin to become tougher. They wouldn't allow for them to get a fresh new level of skin in. It's just like, let me cover this thing up. Let me act like everything is okay. But really, I haven't even processed this.
Right.
I haven't even been able to work myself through this. I'm really walking around as an open wound with a fake scab over it to act like it's healed.
Yep.
And one of the things that I've noticed, especially with millennials, with Gen Zers, with, let me just say it like this, with parents and children, with nieces and nephews and their uncles and their aunts, a part of this younger generation, my generation, being so forthright with the pain and the trauma that we suffered is sort of like a rebellion to our parents and our grandparents.
Right.
I won't be like you. I won't act like everything is okay on the outside, but then the people who live with you have to deal with the trauma, have to deal with the side effects, the symptoms of what you've gone through. The people outside your home, they think everything's okay.
Right.
But the people inside your home,
the people that know you in your, in your most transparent form,
they got to deal with the fact that you're really not healed yet.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're saying to their parents, what they're saying to their grandparents, what they're saying to their aunts and their uncles, what they're saying to their older cousins is, I'm not going to be like you.
I mean, I get it, right? Because when I think about my mother, I say to myself, I'm like, wow, I would never want to go through some of the things she experienced and not get help.
Yeah.
Right? And it not in a negative way. I don't want to be like you, but I don't want to do that, right? Because how can I show up for my daughter? If I'm like that, and it gave me insight into even some of the ways that my mom parented. Right? So I have a better understanding. So sometimes, you may look and think, oh, my parent is hard, or they did this, or they did that. But when you really understand the underlying hurt and pain, it grows you in a level of compassion in spite of, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm the same way. Like, I don't want to be like you in that area, because I don't want to walk around with a facade and a wound, right? And then inflict that on my family.
Yeah, and so now me answering the question, what do I think Naomi's decision and how she handled what she's going through could teach the generations before her, is that life is not about coping, life is about healing.
That's a good point.
That life is just not about taking the bumps and the bruises and moving on. Life is about bumps and bruises. Life is going to have bumps and bruises. Life's going to have trials and tribulations. But the goal is not just to cope with them. The goal is to heal. And I think Naomi was very powerful in her generation now, because I think that generations that, nothing's new under the sun. We go back and forth between things, right? We were talking in the car earlier that it's just funny for me to hear people use the word no cap or that's cap. And I'm just like, yo, we were saying the same things when we were teenagers and young. Man, you capping up. That's cap, right? And so these people out here who are using this now, they think that they've stumbled onto something new, but there's really nothing.
It's recycled.
It's recycled, right? And so what Naomi has said, and so I'm so glad that she has done this for her generation, because heavy drug use is coming back now. Right?
It is back.
It is back. And heavy drug use has always been about coping. So she's even a light to her generation that says, listen, the pill's only going to get you so far.
Right.
The syrup only going to get you so far.
Right.
Right. When and that goes back to the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, drug use was really in. The addict was what people were encouraged to be. And now that it's coming back, I'm so glad that it only teaches the generations before and her generation that when you go through pains and you go through trauma, life is about healing. It's not about coping.
Yeah.
Now, what do you believe the generations before Naomi could do in the midst of her situation to help her?
You know, my biggest thing is, listen, even if you disagree, don't condemn, but just, you know, just have an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just come up, ask questions. You know, try to keep an open mind and try to, in a sense, be there for her even if you don't agree with her.
Yeah.
You know, just have an open mind to it, right? You know, don't condemn the. I feel like it's shaming her.
Yeah.
You know, like, don't shame her, right? Because she didn't do what you did. You wouldn't want somebody shaming you.
That's true.
You know, so.
All right, now let's move on to something that is far more tragic, because it involves death. All right, what Naomi is going through, whenever somebody's soul aches, right? And you can look at that girl and you can just see that her mind and her soul was aching.
Right.
Right, like I feel lost in this. This is not feeling good to me. You know, the type of sadness that I'm feeling is in that depressive state. So I don't want to make it seem like the only reason why I'm saying far more tragic is because Michael K. Williams involved death. He's no longer here with us. Mm-hmm. When you first heard the news, when you first saw it flash across the TV screen, when you first got that breaking story, what were your thoughts about the Michael K. Williams situation?
To be honest with you, I was in utter disbelief.
Mm.
And I guess because it probably was several weeks ago, I forgot what the docu-series he does, but he would take different topics and go around to different cities and interview people. And I really enjoyed that. And one part I enjoyed is he had the series on gangs, and we used to live in Chicago.
Right.
And so I remember he interviewed, you know, a young guy from Chicago and, you know, different things like that. And so I was just shocked because I know recently I did an interview discussing how I believe he has another docuseries coming out.
Right, they're doing another season of that show.
Right, and so I just was floored.
Yeah, I mean, why were you floored?
You want to know why I was floored? Because when you see how he presented in front of the camera, I just didn't know that struggle was going on in the background. And honestly, I had never heard until recently that he was very open about when he played Omar from The Wire, how he was living in crack houses and different things like that. And so I didn't know that part about him. I didn't know that, that part about him. But then you say, The Wire was on, 20 years ago, 2001, 2002. And so you just have the thought process that he has, he's gotten over that.
Yeah, man, I when I heard it, the first words that popped in my mind were "not another one." And not another one is not just not another one to die from a drug addiction. It's not that. It's not another one that didn't find a way to resolve their trauma. Not another one that felt that self-medication behind closed doors was better than vulnerability in open doors. It was not another black man or black woman dying, not because of the situations that they have done to themselves in life, but what was done to them as children. Not another one.
Yep.
Right? Because when you hear Michael K. Williams' story and when you hear DMX's story, they parallel. Right? And what happens is the wounds that they had to fight all of their life as grown men were inflicted upon them as children. And so when I hear Michael K. Williams, I'm saying not another one, because there's a little boy or a little girl in the area of Philadelphia who is going through what they went through in their lives as children. And we have to grab them and show them that what happened to you was horrible, but I don't want to let it scar you in a way where it haunts you actively for the rest of your life.
Right, like you'll grow into an adult, but really, emotionally, you're still that same kid.
Yeah, and I kind of knew what his struggles were, not only because he was transparent about them, but I was watching even on The Shop earlier this week. There was an episode of The Shop, and an actor by the name of Jason Sudeikis is on there. And Jason Sudeikis plays this part of that I really love right now in this show that comes on Apple TV, where he's a soccer coach. And what he says is, there's never been a part that I've played that a part of who I really am was not in the part of this individual that I played. Like, it always connected with me personally. Like, actors play people who they are like.
And when you think about Michael K. Williams, now that I know the background, when you think about Omar, he was actually living like Omar.
Yes.
It's like you're living in these abandoned houses, you're moving from place to place, you're transient. There's a level of instability there. I mean, that's exactly how he was living while he's portraying that character on The Wire.
And that's why it came across.
That's why it came across
so
real.
Where he's playing Atticus's dad on Lovecraft Country, and there's this big tension between him and his sexuality that really happened in his life. Right. When Heath Ledger played the Joker, he was in that dark place. Right. There's a little bit of Frank Lucas and Denzel Washington. There's some Bumpy Johnson in Forrest Whitaker, right? These parts are playing, and matter of fact, actors even say that there are some roles that you play that stick with you so much, it takes you months and years to get out of them. Lakeith Stanfield and what he played in that recent film.
Was it
about the Black Panthers? Judas and the Black Messiah. I mean, that boy was going cuckoo after that. Right. Because you get deep into these feelings. So I felt as though when we saw Omar, when we saw Chalky White from Boardwalk Empire, when we saw Atticus's father from Lovecraft Country, there was a part of Michael K. Williams that he's like, hey, this is me. This is me. But I am just saddened that Michael didn't take the stance that Naomi did. And it's not saying that somebody is better than somebody or somebody felt here. The reason why I'm saddened is because I believe there are going to be people who are going to criticize you, but there's going to be a community of people who are going to come alongside of you and are just like, brother, I'm here for you. You don't have to settle this, right? And I just wonder what his drug dealer feels like. I start to think about stuff like that. Like the person who sold him that heroin with fentanyl.
And they're actually looking into that.
Right.
They said the police are investigating.
Yeah. I just wonder what you feel like. And I wonder what put you in the position to have to sell that to somebody knowing the risk. And so if Naomi and Michael sat down and had a conversation last week, after she says, I don't know when I'm coming back to tennis, before he takes the heroin, what do you think is something she could have told him that could have pushed him away?
I think she would have told him, like, get help.
Yeah.
Like, just, despite everything, despite all of your obligations that you have going on, a lot of times, I feel like a lot of times people are, you look at Michael K. Williams and he's probably like, I have to do this to cope. Well, I have to do this to cope because you want to know what? Tomorrow I have to show up here.
Yeah.
Next week I have to show up there. She probably would just say, take time to yourself and show up for you.
Yeah.
Like, show up for you. Like, get the help that you need despite all of the obligations that you have around you.
Man. And that is something. This is the dynamic that I would love to see. I would love to see more intergenerational conversations happening like that. But what I would love to see is I would love to see the older people actually take advice from those who are younger.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see a son being able to sit down at the table with his father and saying, Dad, the way that you handle the trauma in your life is not working. Here are some suggestions that I have for you.
In a healthy way.
In a healthy way. In a healthy way, right? Right. You know, in a healthy way, definitely. I would love to see a Naomi Osaka being able to sit down and say, listen, Michael, it was too much for me, and I can see it's too much for you. Why don't you step away? Right? Whatever is plaguing you in life, whatever is coming up against you in life, it'll be better for you to step away from it than stepping towards the heroin and putting it in your arm. And let me say this, we're not judging either one of them.
No.
But what we're hoping is that there's still a Naomi out there. There's more Naomis, and there are more Michael K. Williams. Yes. We're hoping that they can have conversations with one another. Mm-hmm. Now watch this. There's a Naomi and there's a Michael K. Williams who are married to one another. Mm-hmm. One is a workaholic, right? Or has a great talent and is struggling with giving it up because they're miserable, and one is coping behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. And it may not be heroin, it may be porn, it may be shopping, it may be food, it may be whatever it is, but they're consistently turning to this thing. What if they got on the couch together?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What if one of them saw the other one say, I'm putting this down, and I know you cope in a different way. I want you to join me in this. What if the Michael K. Williams and the Naomi are actually married to one another?
Right.
Right? And so what we're looking for is just candid conversations, transparent and vulnerable conversations that allow us to separate ourselves from the things in life that have become toxic. Mm-hmm. Tennis is amoral. It's not good or it's not bad.
Right.
It has no morality attached to it. But how an individual approaches tennis
and how it affects them
mm-hmm. is the situations that we need to look out for.
Yes. Yes.
So I just often wonder, man, that was just a thought that came in my mind when I was riding down the street and I heard about Michael K. Williams. I was like, man, I wonder if him and Naomi Osaka got in the same room, what she could have said to him. I wonder what he could have said to her. And I wonder with those who have gone to the grave or who have dealt with the issues and fought their way through them, what we could learn from them. Mm-hmm. What could DMX tell us hard? Or what could DMX tell us all? What he could tell us is that life is hard.
Yes.
Right? And no matter how much you spend yourself out there, no matter how much you try to make life better by how you sacrifice for people, you got to handle the root issue.
You do.
You got to handle the root issue.
Would it be a lifelong struggle?
Yeah. So, Adina, man, this was a great conversation to have with you. I love to hear your worldview on these things. I just love to hear that my wife is dope, that you're thinking about things in the world, right? And I've always known that. But we encourage other married couples. Don't just talk about you.
Right.
Don't just talk about the things that make you laugh. Dig deep into the things that are going on in the world and begin to talk about them. So I want you to close us out. What closing thoughts do you have for the people out there about the topic of the podcast tonight?
The only closing thought I have is, if you need help, get it.
Yeah.
Reach out to whoever you need to reach out to. Like Darren said, there may be some people who, you may feel as though they aren't supporting you, but trust me, there's always somebody out there, even if it's one person that will show up and support you and help you to find whatever help that you need.
Yeah.
You can definitely find at least one person to be in your corner.
Yeah.
Just ask for help. You'd be amazed at what you get when you ask. And you're talking to a person who has a hard time asking for anything. I really do. But I'm telling you, I was telling Darren this a couple weeks back, like, I'm just learning more to, let people know when I need help, because people really care and they want to help you. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that I would add on to that is that the desire to be free from the pains and the struggles and the things that we go through has to be more desirable and worth more, and has to be stronger than the detriment of feeling shame.
Yes.
That we cannot allow people to shame us into not healing. We cannot allow people to shame us into not asking for help. We cannot allow, because it won't be popular on Instagram, it won't get a like, it won't get a love, that people won't check into our stories when we're being real. We can't allow that stuff to keep us back from tackling the real things.
Right, we have to live in reality.
Well, girl, this was another great episode of We're in Therapy, episode 9. We'll see y'all next week with episode 10. Until then, have these conversations with those that you love, with your mate, with your spouse, with somebody you're thinking about getting in a relationship. These are great conversations for somebody you're thinking about getting in a relationship with.
Right, because honestly, it might give you a peek into their life.
It's
you'll be like, oh, I never knew you was
okay.
friend.
Okay. That's okay.
No shade.
No shade.
I'm just
But,
saying, there's
right.
something.
Are you done with that yet?
Right.
You know?
Want to know about the person that you think might be in a relationship.
And when you get people to dig into their feelings, you either see green lights or red flags.
One or the other.
You can see if somebody does it in a healthy way, or if there's something there that you need to be concerned with. So have these look, when you go out on a date, stop talking about superficial stuff.
Ask them, what do you think about what Naomi did?
Get
what do
to
you think about Michael K. Wood?
Girl, listen. I'm throwing them fastballs, them curveballs. I'm throwing the sliders. I want to know what you like on the inside.
Right.
You know, and I put you through that, and you put me through that too. All right, y'all, we out. We'll see you next
Have a
week.
good
Thank you
night.
for watching us. Thank you for listening. Have a great night. Once again, this is the We're in Therapy podcast, a podcast to help couples evade superficial love and build deep and lasting intimacy. We'll check you next week.